It seems like every few weeks, a new financial crisis appears in the news, and for most pre-retirees, this raises a pretty simple question. Can I afford to retire in a recession? And in many cases, can I afford to retire right now? So in today's video, we're going to break down whether a 62-year-old with $1 million in their 401k can afford to retire while going into a recession. We're going to look at the scenario whether they should be considering taking Social Security early while considering the positives and negatives of that decision. Over my decade-plus career in the financial industry, I have helped clients navigate through the boom and bust cycles seen in financial markets, and I've helped them gain confidence and clarity to retire and do the things that they want to do. Unfortunately, recessions are market events that just can't be stopped. For many retirees, the fear of a market downturn can delay retirements or prevent them altogether. And look, I don't want that for you. So in today's video, we're going to talk through this and come up with some solutions together. I'm not only going to answer the question of can I retire in a recession, but I'll walk you through the thought process I use to make these decisions with my current clients so you can apply some of these ideas to your own situation. Before we really get into our discussion today, I want to study a chart with you. So let me share it with you, and I'll link it in the description if you want to come back to it later. But let's take a look at that together. This chart shows the stock market since 1950 and all the big market downturns during that time. It also shows how the market has more than made up for those losses if you had time on your side. But what we're trying to figure out today is what happens if you retire at the wrong time and your portfolio withstands a loss right into retirement. So you can see on these different places in the chart exactly what those wrong times would look like. So what this chart does is it helps us understand and answer simple questions like how long has the average recession been, what percentage has it historically gone down, and how long or how many months will it take for me to recover my money. It's really important to understand that these events in no way dictate what will happen in the future, but it can serve as a high-level guide for us to think through as we do financial planning. So let's take a look at some facts on here. I broke down the chart on a separate Excel spreadsheet so we can get the data from it. Let's take a look at it. So there are 12 occasions in which the stock market is going through a recession and the markets are dropping fairly significantly on the graph. The average stock market decline lasts 14 months, and then it takes 16 months to get back to its previous all-time high. This averages out to 30 months or 2.5 years. And remember that because we're actually going to come back to that later. Another fact here is that the Great Recession and tech bubbles were amongst the most recent, and it's why you've felt that the most. You probably weren't old enough or had enough money in the markets to remember the shorter recessions in the 60s. So we have some recency bias. The total months it took to recover those two big recessions that you probably feel the most were 74 months and 53 months. Another point I got from this was the average percentage lost across all the shown recessions was on average 25% from peak to trough. This is also important because we're going to use this data in our planning together. So what does this actually mean if you are retiring? And what should you do about it? Let's bring this back to a real life hypothetical situation that you might find yourself in. So let's say you and your spouse are 62, you've had a great career and now you have $1 million in your 401k and you're ready to retire. You spend $85,000 per year for all of your expenses and your full retirement Social Security benefits are $34,000 and $17,000 with spousal benefits as well. As we take a look at our scenario, this is where a hypothetical example has a 60-40 allocation. This is where a diversified portfolio comes into play. And we can bring some stats we just saw from our chart earlier. We just said the average stock loss from the top of the market in a recession was 25%. So if you're in a balanced 60-40 portfolio, meaning 60% stocks and 40% bonds, you've lost around 15%. That is important to remember because you'll see on TV the market is down X%. But if you have bonds in your portfolio, it can act as a counterweight in many of those scenarios. Being down 15% is a little bit more palatable, but still tough to swallow in your first year in retirement. So let's take a look at a planning scenario together. This is a Monte Carlo simulation, which means it's running 1,000 random market conditions, and we're going to use the halfway point or a 50% trial. We're also going to make it present value so we can think of money in terms of today. So let's take a look here together. And just a reminder, we have these buttons already pressed, right? So you're 62, your spending is $85,000. And if you're retiring early, you need private health insurance before Medicare kicks in. So that's always something to consider if you are retiring early. For all other expenses, we're just going to assume that it's in that $85,000, whether you have a mortgage, pay rent, or what have you. And so what you're going to see here is if you just retire right now and we have general market conditions, it actually looks pretty good here. You have a 76 probability of success. Your assets last until 90. And in fact, you still have, in today's value, over $400,000 left in your portfolio. So that's all good. But we're not answering the question of if you happen to retire in a normal market condition. We're talking about a recession and a market downturn. So to best simulate that, I created a scenario in which you lose 15% right off the bat. So let's go ahead and do that. And what you notice here is that you lose quite a bit of value and your probability of success goes down to 27%. So what's happening here, right? What's happening is in that first year, you'll notice you have at the end of 2025, $716,000 left. And what's happening is, remember, you're retired, so you have to withdraw, or you're going to withdraw in this example, $85,000 plus an additional $18,000, and it's in a retirement account. So you got 401k money that has not been taxed yet. So you got to pay taxes on that. And so you combine that with a 15% drawdown on your $1 million portfolio, and you see pretty quickly, all of a sudden you go from $1 million to $716,000. I mean, that's pretty bad. And that leads to a very high withdrawal rate. And when you think about it, it kind of makes sense, right? So you lose some significant portion of your portfolio early on, and even if the market comes back 10, 15, 20%, it doesn't get back to that $1 million because you're withdrawing money, and even 10% off of 700,000 now is 70,000, whereas if you had $1 million, it would be 100,000, right? So even the averages and percentages are working against you when the market comes back. And so it's just something to think about, right? So your money lasts until 83. And remember, you still have Social Security kicking in. So even if you ran out of money, you have Social Security. So it's not like you go to $0. And the other thing to think about is you probably have some home equity in your home, so you can use that to kind of sustain a lifestyle past that. But I don't know of many clients that want to just give up their house so that they can continue to live. That's kind of that worst and last case scenario. So this doesn't really give us a lot of confidence to retire, right? So what can we do, right? So you can use just some common sense here and spend a little bit less in the first few years until Social Security kicks in. And what you'll notice here is that actually does help the probability go up, and it extends the amount your portfolio lasts for a little bit longer. So that's one way of doing it, right? Just saying, hey, you know what? I had the unfortunate mistake, or I had the unfortunate happenings of a recession right when I retired. Maybe I should think about a $20,000 decrease in my spending per year, and that helps. The other thing that you can do is take Social Security early. So we did talk about that earlier and what that means. So for this family, right, if you wait till age 67, you're going to get a full retirement benefit. If you take it early, remember Social Security is going to start taking a percentage off for every month that you take it early. And if you take it at 62, you're missing out on about a 30% income difference there from your full retirement age. So what's happening here is it actually shows that it increases the probability of success to 66%. It's not a huge, confidence booster, but it does show in this scenario that you do have some money left over at the end. So the question is why, right? Everyone's been telling you to delay Social Security, you increase your income in retirement, which is all true. But what's happening here is it comes back down to the withdrawal percentage. How much money are you taking from your portfolio so that you can have as much in your portfolio as possible? So in this scenario, because you're taking income at a reduced amount still, you're needing a little bit less from your portfolio, so it actually lasts a little bit longer. And when the markets come back, when it inevitably will, you'll get some benefit there, right? And you'll be able to continue to live off of that money. There is some risk here, though, right? Taking Social Security early isn't without risk. What happens if the stock market doesn't come back in a way that gives you the confidence to continue to have that portfolio and you need to continue to withdraw? By taking an earlier Social Security, you have locked in now a smaller benefit for the rest of your and your spouse's life. That can be hard to swallow if for some reason your portfolio doesn't last as long as you think it is going to, and that can be kind of painful. So for that reason, it's, even though it shows a success here on this scenario, it's not a, hey, we're going to do this, right? But it can help. If you have the confidence that you can allow your portfolio to last, if you give yourself some guardrails to spend differently when the markets are down than when they're up, then you probably have a higher chance of this actually succeeding here as well. One of the interesting things that I want to show you is what happens if that 15% correction comes in your portfolio, not necessarily this year, but let's say 10 years from now. What it shows is actually it does give you a pretty good probability of success. And you can look at this versus the scenario that we looked at in the very beginning. And what you'll notice here is that because you're only taking these two spending $85,000 plus 18 plus tax, it's going down. But then once your Social Security kicks in at age 67, it really lessens the withdrawal percentage at that time, and so you have a little bit higher of a probability of success of getting through that. And so here you can see in 2035 that big drop, and a 15% off of $600,000 10 years from now means a little bit less than a 15% right off the bat when you're taking money in today's environment. So that's just something that I wanted to share with you, right? Not all scenarios are playing out here. It's what we're really trying to do is we're really trying to understand what happens in a market correction when you get 15% off of the portfolio and what to do. So what is the takeaway? Number one, have a balanced portfolio that gives you options. Don't go too conservative though, because you still need that money to grow over this time period and for the rest of your life. Number two, keep cash or bonds that you can specifically use during a downturn. We just discussed that the average duration is 30 months during that time frame. What if you created a bond ladder to get you through the recession? One thing to be careful though is if you're only using the bond portion of your portfolio, you might be left with a riskier portfolio near the bottom that you might not be comfortable with. So number three, spend less during a market downturn. This may seem pretty obvious, but wait to go on those family vacations till your portfolio's back. Use a guardrail system. This is where I tell clients in retirement, good years in the stock market, shave off a little bit more, save it specifically for a trip. In bad years, use that money you set aside or wait a year. Number four, consider taking Social Security if you're comfortable knowing you are locking in a lower permanent benefit and you have the ability to guard and protect your portfolio. And number five, my least favorite, is possibly delay retirement. This is something that you may need to consider if you are particularly worried. Just remember, everyone has a different situation and you should not be following generalized advice. You should create your own plan with your own ways to figure out how to best go through a market downturn and what works with you personally and your family goals. So to finish things up here, you now know the process and some ideas I think about with clients that you can also utilize when you're looking to optimize your retirement. However, there will be multiple and different nuances that come up in your specific situation that I have not been able to cover in such a short video. So if you want a team of professionals to analyze your situation and create an optimal plan completely tailored to you, click the first link in the description. It will take you to a page where you can book a completely free consultation with me, where we can begin to help and build your retirement of your dreams.